Well, I know the Labour government has, particularly in recent times, have been facing a bit of criticism about how local we were in government. And there's no doubt that, now's the time to have some fresh thinking. But, we helped to create another 150 parish and town councils since 1997. We changed the rules to allow London to actually create parish councils in the communities they want. I think the first one's due to happen in Wapping, I think. And I think when I look at the Localism Bill, all 300, 400 pages of it, there's a lot in there actually builds on what Labour was trying to do. I mean, community involvement, the ability for communities to run service, to buy community assets, those are some things that we actually started because actually we recognise that just as with national government, local government doesn't necessarily always have to run everything, but I do believe both at the local and national level it's important to have an accountable body which is a driving force to help communities to achieve their dreams and aspirations. And part of that might be housing, part of it might be a pleasant place to live, safe and clean, good education for schools, good local services in terms of transport and health. And, town and parish councils, districts, unitaries, county councils all play a part in different ways to help make that happen. So for me, localism is very important. It's how elected representatives can enable others in the community to have a say and always be responsive to that as well and listening. But I have to say it's got to be localism that isn't a smokescreen just for cuts. And the problem is at the moment so many local authorities are facing huge cuts, and that's ultimately what could shape local government in the next few years rather than the big society and localism. Well, I mean, there are some opportunities there which are, I think, are worth looking at. The issues around community assets and the role of parish and town councils in that. The opportunity for actually to build on what we'd already said was that town and parish councils could actually take the lead in building more homes. I know from my previous life as a housing minister, there are a number of those that are elected at that very local level who are interested in community land trusts and being involved in working with the community to develop affordable homes that could be kept in the community for perpetuity to meet housing need. So I think there are some provisions there. The neighbourhood plans, I say the neighbourhood plans, and there are already parish plans, and I think that's another aspect about this localism debate about we're not starting at ground zero here, and part of our job in scrutinising this bill, and we're very thankful for the help we're getting from organisations that represent local government in all its diversity and forms, is to test out what is actually new or what is just either a rebranding or building on something that's gone before, and then really testing out as to fine a community right to bid to run services, which could be a town or parish council, communities right to buy community assets, that's fine, but how is that going to happen? Where is the resource going to come from that? And also, how will it be democratic? Because it shouldn't be that only those with the loudest voices and the deepest pockets should be able to have a say. And for me, at the most local level, town and parish councils are the obvious democratic body to bring some governance and accountability to that process. And we'll be testing and asking questions about that as the weeks of interrogation on this bill go ahead. That's an interesting one. I think one thing I'd like to ask colleagues who are already elected in town and parish councils is what do they think they haven't got at the moment? I think again, under the last government, the last Labour government which I was part of, I think we did actually look to ways which we could stretch the involvement of parish and town councils. Parish plans are one of the ways that they can influence particularly the sort of planning and development agenda that the planning authority might be overseeing. But no, I'd be interested to know. I mean, one of the things we have been looking at in terms of the sort of borough councils and unitary councils is where there's scrutiny committees, the right to actually summon people to give evidence. Now, I don't think obviously town and parish councils, even some of the largest ones, have that same sort of function. But, you know, that might be something that they might be interested in. But again, I'd be interested to hear what they have to say about what they think is missing at the moment in terms of where they have a say. Of course, the last Labour government did make sure that town and parish councils retain the right to set their own precept. And I suppose more than anything else, if you're a town and parish councillor and you want to decide what you want to do, having that right is pretty important. Well, I think again, you know, I think we went for the power of well-being because we felt it in a sort of quite a user-friendly way, sort of tried to encapsulate something about what a community wants above all, which is to feel, you know, good about the place they live. And, you know, so that power for, you know, parishes and town councils to be able to comment on and do activities, take action under that broad umbrella, actually don't think was an actually bad thing to be able to give. Now, obviously in the Localism Bill, we've got the general power of competence. Ultimately, do you know what I mean? It comes down to semantics, doesn't it? If that ultimately means the same sort of thing, then, you know, there we go. I mean, it's, you know, I think, you know, it is about recognising that, you know, communities and what those families and people living there want touch a number of different areas. Some areas not directly under control of the elected representatives, but something the elected representatives have a right to feel that they should have some influence over or a say over or represent the views of their constituents over. And to that end, I think that was partly what the power of, you know, the duty of power of well-being was meant to be about. I think, you know, what was interesting about the general power of competence in the Localism Bill, not that we are against that, is it then has a number of areas where the Secretary of State can step in and curtail it. I think, you know, generally in terms of if you're not supporting something that is going against primary legislation in law, then you should be able to sort of look at different areas. Partnership is also, you know, good partnerships have created lots of dynamic relationships with bus service operators, with health and others, which have sparked off some activities that probably, you know, even 15 years ago, town and parish councils maybe weren't that involved in. So you wouldn't want to limit the ability to be able to work with others or initiate action that you feel that actually has the support of your community and is important for the community that you represent. I sort of feel that's something for the community to decide, to be honest. Because, you know, I'm not really a sort of we shall build it, they shall come type of person. I think, you know, within communities, if there is felt that they, you know, they would, a town or parish council would add something. I mean, it's all about adding value, isn't it? To how communities feel that they can have a say, but also more than have a say, more directly take some responsibility for some of the services and functions that are delivered at the most local level. So I think it's about providing that, but then really it's down to, I think, the communities themselves to sort of ask themselves why they want that. Now, the good thing is that there are plenty of examples of town and parish councils in, you know, all sorts of shapes and sizes in all parts of the country. Wapping, I think, is going to be the first one. Seems to me that actually the National Association of Local Councils has got a template there in which to evangelise for more of them. But, you know, it's important that any new tier of government, has to sort of be bedded in. You know, is it something people feel they want, and why do they want it? You know, in the last Labour government, we obviously spent some time talking about regional government. And on paper, actually, you know, it seems a really good idea, and we know it works for London. But actually, it was clear when we started having the referendums and what have you, that there wasn't really the buy-in from the public, and that's what's really important about this, the buy-in. Well, first of all, I think any organisation has to always be looking out from itself. We can all be guilty of becoming, for the want of a better word, anoraks, where we're so obsessed with, you know, what we're doing, you know, the bureaucracy, sitting on committees. Committees are important, but it's got to be a meeting with a purpose, it seems to me, not just a meeting for the sake of it. But we can all be in danger, of those of us who are involved in democratic representation, of not losing sight of the need to constantly be looking outwards and actually thinking about how others see us. And if we're not open, if we don't seek people out to hear their views, if we're overly bureaucratic in the way we run things, then the danger is, people aren't going to, support you. And I'm not saying that on a party political basis, I'm saying support the function that you represent and the body you represent. So in terms of my top tips, I suppose it is, try to see yourself as others see you in the community, which might not always be a pleasant experience. Find ways actually to move beyond the sort of more traditional structures, to experiment with other sorts of forums. I'm, for example, having what I've got my Caroline coffee and chat. Well, I've got my coffee here, but basically, I'm doing is I will leaflet a few neighbourhoods in my constituency and just say, come and join me for a coffee and a chat. In fact, I'm having it at some rooms run by one of my town councils in a few weeks' time, and anyone can just come in and just have a chat about what concerns them. I think it's trying to sort of think about different ways. The other thing, of course, is that I don't think it's for everybody, but the new social media, that buzzword. I mean, there's ways to do things and connect with people now in a more maybe accessible way. Some would find if your local community, are working or have got busy lives, trying to find ways through Facebook and what have you to allow them to be engaged rather than the more traditional, council meeting and public meeting. It's toying with these things, and because we do all this work and people put in a lot of valuable time and effort as councillors. But I know how frustrating it is. I've knocked on enough doors in the many years I've been involved in politics to feel very frustrated when someone says, I didn't know about that. And sometimes you think, that's terrible, we sent round that plan. Why don't actually we have to step back from that and say, well, what weren't we doing quite right? The biggest issue that this neighbourhood faced, some people knocking on the door didn't know what was happening. So I think it's just sort of, challenging our own ways of behaving, looking outwards. I think actually, sometimes having a little citizens panel drawn, which could involve young people, older people from different backgrounds, who occasionally you use as your test bed and sound out on views and things, is a good idea, and a good way to publicise actually also what work is being done. So I don't think there's a shortage of ideas, but the first step is, are you willing to look outside of the way you work and just, as I say, sometimes just think about how others see you rather than what you think they should be seeing you as.